94.3 The Dude is very grateful to our men and women in uniform. We're proud to recognize local members of our military by turning the spotlight on them right now in our Soldier Salute.
Today in the Soldier Salute, we're speaking with retired Illinois National Guard Sergeant Matthew Bond. So, Sergeant Bond, tell us about you.
Well, Ty, I was born and raised in Atlanta. I spent a little bit of time in North Florida, growing up through middle school and early part of high school, and then my dad relocated us to Illinois, where I graduated high school as school mascot and started to attend Southern Illinois University. Had a hard time paying for school, so I decided to join the Illinois Army National Guard as infantry. I love to hunt and fish and be outdoors, so thought infantry would be a really great move.
You got a gun, you're outside, sure enough.
Yeah. So I ended up as a 5'9", 155-pound M60 gunner in 3rd Squad.
The gun must have been bigger than you, Sergeant.
If you stood it upright, it was close. So I spent almost 8 years in the Illinois Army National Guard, and after 6 years, our whole unit moved from infantry over to artillery, where I was a 155 howitzer-towed gunner. So my job was to sit on the gun, traverse it, and fire for effect 10 miles downrange.
Sergeant Bond, what got you fired up so many years ago to go ahead and join the Illinois National Guard?
Well, you know, my dad was a Vietnam vet. He was a butter bar first lieutenant in Vietnam for several years. So my brother also joined the Army and was in artillery as well. So when things began to struggle for me to go to school, I decided I would follow in my family's footsteps, and I joined the Illinois Army National Guard. It's actually kind of cool. My aunt took a picture of my dad and his Class A's, me and my Class A's, and my brother and his fatigues, and superimposed where we have all three of our military pictures back when we were very young.
How did you tell your dad, the first lieutenant who served in Vietnam, that you were going to follow in his footsteps?
It's funny now, being older, I look back on it. I did it for a lot of the reasons to simply go to school, help pay my way to school. Now I look at it so differently. I mean, so much has transpired in the last 30 years since I joined. But to tell my dad, while he was proud, he was also scared, truly, for what he had seen in Vietnam. It was tough, and especially when the first Gulf War came about. My 4th day at basic training in Fort Benning, Kuwait was invaded, and that was a difficult time to see that transpire and hear my dad telling some of the stories about what he saw. So there was a little bit of fear, but he was also very proud of both my brother and I.
So, Sergeant Bond, I always ask this question. You decide you're going to go ahead and join the National Guard, which is the Army. You go to basic training like everybody else. So you get on the bus, you're in Fort Benning, Georgia, and you pull up, and you see this sea of campaign hats, about 4 million of them, heading your way. What is in your mind as you're looking out the window of that bus?
We did pull into Fort Benning, Georgia, late in the evening. I was the old man. I was 19 years old when I signed up.
Gramps.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I was the oldest one in my whole platoon. So there was a lot of young kids very scared. I was scared too, but I think having my dad and experience and my brother having gone through it, basic training just a couple of years in advance, I realized everyone had a job to do, including me, but even those drill sergeants. And while they were yelling at me, I just like to believe they really weren't yelling at me.
Sure. Down and beat your face.
That's right. Plenty of that.
Sergeant, I understand there's a story in your basic training career where you were writing a letter home. What happened?
The one thing you do in basic training is you live for letters and mail. Mail call is your favorite part of the day because all you want to do is receive that piece of mail. So you have to find time to write letters so that you get the letters back in return.
Sure.
One day while we were doing some classwork, I was taking notes, but yet doing the old trick of writing a letter in the back part of my notebook. It just so happens that Drill Sergeant Pettingill, will never forget his name, slides up behind me and pulls my notebook. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to read the notes. And he's reading the notes, but then he flips through all the blank pages and he gets to the letter. So at first I swallow deeply thinking, this is it. I'm about to push up Georgia. This is going to be great. But in the letter, it was, while I was saying all of the things, I even mentioned how much I respected both Drill Sergeant Pettingill and Drill Sergeant Jordan. Had even said in there, I know they're doing their job and I respect their job and it's the role that they play. But I'm reading this thinking, so is that going to save me or is it just not going to matter? And literally at the end of the day, finished reading everything, put the notebook back down, slid it in front of me and walked away. Right. So one for the soldier.
You don't get many in basic training.
No, not at all.
Sergeant, when you look back on your time serving your community and country, what's one of your takeaways?
I received 2 Soldier of the Year nominees while I was in the Illinois Army National Guard. And it was really, really quite an honor. And the one thing I realized is even in the tough times, sometimes you just have to laugh and not take it so serious. And literally, while I took what we had to do very seriously, I knew that we had a job to do. We had to be trained. We had to be prepared. When we received our notice that we might go off to the first Gulf War, it was the reality check. But through the years of preparing, and even after that, sometimes when it was raining and you're out in the woods and it's just miserable, you don't need to be so serious. So I was often the one that would take off running and dive headfirst into a mud puddle because everyone would just work so hard at not getting wet. I'm like, your snivel gear is not going to help you stay dry. Just get wet. So I think through life, I've tried to remember it doesn't have to always be so serious. Smile. It makes everything a little bit better.
Sergeant Bond, what was your favorite thing about your 8 years serving in your country and your state in the Illinois National Guard?
The camaraderie. Truly, to this day, still one of my best friends in life, Tyler Millsap. Tyler Millsap and I are still friends after all these years. There were so many guys and so many stories. I think that's one of the things. I can still sit around with friends and a cold one and tell you about, whether it be Drill Sergeant Pettingill, Drill Sergeant Jordan, or my time back on my own home base unit with my friends. A lot of us joined fraternity together in college, and still to this day, 30 years later, that's one thing that I absolutely love about my time in the Illinois Army National Guard, for sure.
Thanks for joining us in our Soldier Salute.